Well, this week's another how-to video on changing those old twin cam chain tensioner shoes. It's something, if you have an old twin cam, an early model one, you need to at least check on, because these shoes can wear down, disintegrate, and destroy inside your cam plate. So we're going to get that fixed today. This is going to be on a 99 twin cam, the first year that it was introduced, that Harley put it out. And it's got the spring-loaded cam chain tensioners that often fail, usually within very few miles. So we want to check that. We're going to replace that on this bike. It's part of a revival build, so if you want to see the whole 2 series videos on that, getting that 99 back on the road that hadn't ran in years, then I'll put the link down in the description. So welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. Alright, I got our pipes off. I got our floorboard loosened up enough to move out of the way to get the pipe up. We want to move all of our tools and whatnots because it is going to leak and make a mess. And now we are ready to start taking this cam cover off here. And now this is the first year of the twin cam, so there is a cam sensor in here, but it's not like the Evo where when you take this plate off you have to worry about the tension on your cams, because these have 2 cams, not just a single cam, and they are held up in place by the oil pump assembly. But there will be a sensor inside here, so we can't take the cover completely away from the bike, but we can get it off enough to inspect the cam chain tensioner. So of course, if you were working on an Evo, you would not, oh sorry, didn't mean to hit you in the head. You would not do this until you loosened up your push rods and let all the pressure off inside here. But with this, we don't have to worry about that. But there is a cam sensor in here behind that plate there. But we should not have to mess with that. Let's pull our bolts out here. There we go. We'll get a little soft mallet. We'll give it a little love tap. Now we can set this kind of over to the side. This is your, I don't know if you can see that or not. Well, you probably can't. But this is your tensioner, or your cam sensor here for the timing. That runs in this little groove right here. Now we can look at our tensioners. I'm just going to take the tension off of this chain here, move it back, and look at that. Woo-wee! We caught that in time. So we will be replacing these. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's starting to come apart. There we go. That'll hold that back for us. And it's bright orange handled and no chance of leaving that in. Now, let me get you up here. Okay, so there you can see it's starting to pit and disintegrate and come apart. Probably about maybe 6,000–7,000 miles later, that would have just fallen apart. So there's one back behind this oil plate. So we are going to have to replace these tensioners, and I'm so glad we checked that. We have the cam inner and outer chain tensioners. I like the mid USA's because when I replace these, I like to replace just not the shoes, but the springs as well. That way I know that everything as far as the cam chain tension is new. Now you can just buy the shoes, grind the rivet out of the old spring, put the new shoe in with the new pin. You can do that, and that's fine. And Psycho Gaskets, they make really good shoes. If you want the whole kit like this, with the new springs and shoes and this guide, I would suggest Mid USA. I put several of these in. They do really, really good. There's the part number there for you. I went ahead and picked up this little kit for like 10 bucks, I think, online. That locks your cam chain gear teeths in. And then a little just socket tool to pull these back to put your little pins in. They sent me these pins and they didn't have any loop-de-loops for your fingers, so they were just straight. So I just bent them. Anyways, then also we have the genuine James gasket kit for the cam. And this kit comes with a lot of things that you might need or might not need depending on how your bike is set up. We'll talk about it when we get over there. It does come with exhaust gaskets, but they're the style like on the Evos. And on the twin cams, I like to use these kind of coned gaskets here. I think these kind of fit better for the twin cams. You can use these that come in the kit, but I just take the extra step to get these because I think they make just a little bit better seal. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and take these plugs out. So we got to rotate the motor over to get the push rods off of tension. I do have the rear wheel jacked up and it is in 5th gear. Now while I can turn these push rods both intake and exhaust with my hand, I still want to take this cover off and just verify with my peepers the position of the rocker arms. I'm just loosening these up a little at a time in a crisscross pattern. I did remove the coil. I just unbolted it and kind of it's laying on that other side over there. Now you will find you'll have a short bolt and you'll have a long bolt. The long bolts are for your fat end. The shorter bolts are for your skinny end. Now we should be able to just raise this up and move it out of the way. And yeah, it does look like a stock gasket there. The kit does not come with a new gasket here. We're not taking the heads off or anything like that. We're just going to take this rocker arm assembly off. And now with this off, I can verify that there's no pressure on the valve springs back here. And these are both down, and I can go down here and easily turn these both with my hands. So now we're ready to take this assembly off, and then all we can do is just slide the push rods out. These bolts here are 3/8, and I like to go ahead and take the breather assembly out first. Because these are smaller bolts, I know there's no pressure on this, but I don't want to take the big bolts out for the rocker arm assembly, and all the pressure of this just being on these little bolts. We'll just push those up, but I'm going to leave those in there. And then we'll 1/2 inch on these. We're going to do a 1/4 turn at a time and a cross pattern as we take those off. All right, so we'll start here. 1/4 turn, 1/4 turn. And I don't like using a gun on anything internal. You guys know that if you've watched any of my videos. When we get inside a motor, I do not use power tools. It takes a little bit longer. You say, well, it really don't matter once you get them broken loose. It's just a good habit to get into. Leaving all my bolts in, and then we're going to lift this up as an entire assembly. Now that all the bolts are out, we can just raise this up, move this out of the way. Contact points look very good. There's no burring or marring. This motor was really taken care of. Now, with that out, we can pull the intake out. And the good thing about doing it this way, if you're going to reuse these push rods, you don't have to reset them. They're already set. Now we will check for lash and end play and all that good stuff, but we don't have to reset them. So that's the intake. Here's the exhaust on the front cylinder. Now our push rods can just fall out. We'll set those aside. And what you're going to notice is that when you line your push rods up, you'll have the exhaust that will be longer than the intake. So you can mark them if you want to, or you can just remember my exhaust is always longer than my intake. And this is for the front cylinder, so we'll set it with the front cylinder. And now with the push rods out, now we can take our tappet block cover off. And these are a 3/16, should be a 3/16 Allen. And for this rear bolt tappet, you're gonna have trouble getting you know, a socket in there or an extension in there, or even just a regular Allen wrench that you hold in there, because of the way they designed this jug here. So I've got a 3/16. It was longer. I cut it off, and that is for getting into tight spots like that. Lifter block off. Now there is a little kind of locking tab there that locks the lifters, that keeps the lifters from spinning. And now we can take our lifters out, and we'll pull this one on up and out. And what you'll find is that there is an oiler hole on one side only. And people say, well, which way when you put it back in does it matter? It does not matter which way this oil hole points. But I like to put them in the way that they were in, especially if we're going to reuse these lifters, because that's the way these lifters rolled on the cam. So I'll be sticking this back in with the oil hole pointing back on this first lifter. Now this gives us a chance to look at the lifter roller as well. And this is nice and smooth. I see zero marring. I believe those cams are going to be almost near perfect. Now I will move this lifter side to side. There is a little bit of play that's supposed to be there. They're supposed to kind of slide and roll and be smooth, but I don't feel any kind of bad lifter at all. And then I will put the whole block and lifters over on the table with the front cylinder or the front cover. All right, so we can just go ahead and start taking our cover off. And on this model bike, Harley was wise enough to, on this bottom cover here, there's two top tubes that go from this square that splits off. They're round stock, but then they put a plate under here and a plate on top. The plate under here, they have kind of gave you a little indent on this side to be able to get those bolts out of the cover. So that's really nice that they did that. So now we can just slide that off this way. As you can see, the intake is all the way down. The exhaust is all the way up. Well, maybe not all the way, but it is up. So I'm going to rotate that tire. I've got it in 5th gear, got the plugs out. And I'm going to watch when both of these are down. I'm going to verify they're both off-load by turning these push rods, and then we can take this top out right here. So you watch up here, let me know. Now you got to holler when those come down. All right, my intake's going up. That's squirting the fuel in, and now everything should be closed. All right, now I can turn my exhaust push rod, and I can really turn my intake push rod. Now on these on the back here, you will not be able to take these bolts out. You will leave them in the assembly. We'll take it all off as one unit. All right, now with everything unbolted, we can raise all this up and fiddle and wiggle and move around and bring all this out. Now we can go ahead and pull our exhaust tube up and out. I know you say, man, that looks terrible. No, that's how they're supposed to look actually, because it means they're spinning. They're not too tight. They're not under too much load. All right, now our lifter block is off. You can get kind of hopefully a better view now on this lighter side. But now we can go ahead and take our little pin out that keeps the lifters from spinning. And now we should be able to just grab a lifter and pull it up enough to kind of grab it and hold it. And we'll pull it up out of here. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and start taking things apart inside the cam cavity. You've got timing marks. You've got a dot here on this big gear, and on this model, it still had a timing little sleeve here. Your model might not have that. I wanted to line up this dot and this dot before I took anything off. Of course, I'm verifying that this is indeed in time. And on the cam, on this front cam, there's a dot that's on this side. And then on this rear cam, there should be a dot on this side as well. So once you get these lined up, these rears should be lined up. So when we take this gear off, we should find a dot that lines up exactly parallel with the dot over here. There we go. So those are now loose. Now we can release the tension on this. Get our little pin ready again, our grenade pin. Slide it in, I want to get it away. All right, now we can just go ahead and take our gear bolts out. There will be a washer with it, a spacer washer kind of thing. Now on the newer models of the Twin Cam, these are both 1/2 inch heads, but on the newer model one, I think one's a 9/16 and one's a 1/2, if I remember correctly. We'll take that out. Now I want these to be in the same respective hole as they come out of. So I will keep these separate because they look to be about the same length. I guess that's why they went with different size heads. Now we'll take us just a little flathead, and what I want to do is just kind of very carefully try to wiggle. All right. Now, before I take this off, now with my bolt out, I can see the end of this cam on the rear, and I can see that point. And I can look over here and see the point over here. I can look here and look here. So what I want to do before that gear comes off is I want to line everything back up. That way, when I put things back in, it's already kind of set to where I want it. Just a little at a time. There we go. Now I want that to set right there, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Now, I like my chain to run in the direction that it's broken in and running in, so I'll take me a little zip tie. And I'll zip tie that gear in to that tooth there. And then when I pull this off on up here in the top, now I should be able to just wiggle it off. I'll take another zip tie and zip tie that down. Okay, now I know that when I put this back on here, I'm timed. These are set where they need to be. My oil pump is timed with my rear cam, and that is very, very important. We are replacing this shoe as well. Guide, I guess it's called. But it feels pretty good, and we'll just compress this and pull this on off. Get that out of the way for us, and remember, when you put it back on, the tall end goes up and the smooth end or pointy end goes down. Now we're ready to actually take the plate off with the cams installed, because there's another cam chain tensioner back behind there. Now you'll notice that on this plate there's numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. That's for your oil pump. The oil pump will come out with the entire cam assembly, cam plate assembly. So we're not going to mess with these 4 bolts. I think that's why they have them numbered, so you can just take the whole thing off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's all that's holding this entire cam plate, cams, and oil pump on this bike. We'll start breaking them loose. I'll jump over here. There is a torquing sequence when we go back. There's one, they should all be the same lengths. If you're working on a newer twin cam, when you take that gear off, there will be a spacer back here that you'll want to go ahead and take off when you take the gear off. With these early model ones, the spacer is actually made into the gear itself and sets up in there. Just wanted to point that out to you, because if you're watching me and you're like, hey, what's this? How this fell off in the floor? What does it go to? That's what it goes to. Just a little bit of persuasion, and already we're losing oil, so there's good separation there. And we're going to pull it off this crankshaft right here. Okay, so that's what you want to watch. Now that you got it out, we can go ahead and just wiggle that out. So here is our plate we pulled off. Here's our oil pump, and here is that O-ring there that goes into the case. Here's your rear cam and your front cam. Here's the cam lobes. Here's that rear tensioner. And boy, do we catch that in time. These O-rings here, replace that. There's a big O-ring here. Replace that. I've seen guys not replace that, and that'll leak and they'll lose oil pressure. check out your cam bearings, your little roller bearings in here. Just roll them around. These are so nice and smooth. USA bearings, that's awesome. If you saw any damage, if you felt anything that is not smooth and right, this is the time to replace your cam bearings. Also, check your cams out. See how they look here on riding on those bearings, and these are nice and smooth. There's no marrings. Even on our cam lobes, these have a little bit of what you'd say wear, but the front ones don't. Everything in this bike looks really, really good. It was just time to change those tensioners. All right, with that all out of the way, check your shaft on your cam as well. And everything looks nice and good here. I'm happy. Okay, now that we have the oil pump out, we've got to get this rear cam chain tensioner off. Now there's a tool you can buy that you can squeeze and it brings this back. You can take this circlip out and then lift this whole thing up, put the new one in, slap it back in, circlip it back, you're good to go. That's the easy route. By the manual, you take this back, of course, by the retainer pin here. Hold the tension off the chain. You loosen this support bracket here. Take these out, all four of these, this cam bracket. Then on this side, you take this circlip off and you press out these cams. So this one is not really pressed on, but this one is. You press it out of the plate, both cams and the chain come off. Then you take the pin out of this tensioner, it goes all the way down. You can just pull this off, put the new one on. If you have the tool's expensive. It's like 150 bucks and it's just very simple. It's basically a socket, bolts, and 2 pieces of angle iron. You could probably make it, but even if you bought the tool, say, well, 150 bucks isn't bad. You use the tool, you take this off, put the new one on. What you're bypassing is you're not inspecting these bearings inside here. So by doing that, you never pull these out and you never see those bearings inside. You might have one bad and you've caught it just in time. So what I like to do is do it by how the manual says. It's a little bit more cumbersome with the oil pump still on it, but it's doable. So you can do that safely. Now, if you have any cracks you see on your plate here, because these are all hollow where the oil runs and feeds all the various different places, then you might want to just get the tool, put it on there. But if you got, fracture cracks and stuff in this, you might just want to replace this whole thing. Somebody has been in here before. How do I know? These are Andrew cams. So very, very nice cams, and that's why they look so good as they do. But I don't know when that was done, and the tensioners on these are already failing. So we're going to upgrade with some better tensioners, and here you can see a better view of that pitting. Now I've seen worse, where they're wore down and these ends break off. So we did this in time, but look at that pitting. I just don't. Harley says they allow for some pitting, but I just don't like that. When I run my hand across here, it's just rough. It's like gravel, and that's what your chain's riding on. And this one back here looks to be probably in the same condition. So I've got the pin in, holding this back. Now these just kind of weedy. Spin, spin, spin. I took the snap ring out here, and you can reuse these. Just make sure you make sure you don't bend them when you take them out. And then I took the bolts here for this plate. And this plate, like I said, has a groove in the cam that sets in. So now this is ready to be pressed out. We'll press this out where the clip was, and then this we might have to just kind of little mallet tap it. We're going to be very slow, very careful. It doesn't take a lot. There is no bolt that goes in here. You have to worry about protecting threads. There's nothing like that. We're just going to find a little socket that'll fit over that. Now this way we can check our bearings in here and make sure they're good and tight. I got my blocks set up where I think they're just right and what I need. They're at an angle. They're going to support this best it can here. It's not in the way of my chain underneath. I got a 1/2-inch socket that fits over that cam end very well. And now the 4 bolts are out of the bracket, the clips out of the top. And now we'll just slowly start pressing that cam out. I'm going to hold the cams underneath. And like I said, it doesn't take much pressure. See how it's already coming? And that other cam should come along with it. Now let me get a little persuasion on this one over here. There we go. It was just stuck. We can go ahead and change this rear tensioner out. And look at that. Pull the grenade. That will pop all the way down and all the tension is off of it. Now there's no tension on this spring. We can take this clip off, slide that off, slide the new one on, get our tension back, put our pin back in. Then we're ready to put our bearings and cams back in. And there we go. Look how bad that was. Now according to Harley, believe it or not, that'd probably still be within spec. And here's the new spring. Now when you buy these, I like the mid USA ones. These inserts here are stronger metal than the cheap ones you see on eBay or Amazon. They will be almost brass looking. Those are super cheap, and the pads are cheap too. Now again, the best pads you can buy are the co-gasket pads, but I like replacing springs with the pads, and here's why. Okay, that's very loose. Nothing at all. We'll slide our new one on. We'll make sure that goes in the hole. That goes down over there. We'll go ahead and put our pin on. When I do this, I like to make sure I give that a quick smash, squeeze it out, snap it down over there. I want to make sure that it's snapped on there good. Now it'll stay under tension, but I just want to make sure that's on there really, really good. I want that tension to go all the way around. Get my pin ready. There we go. All right, now that's loaded and it's on and it's out of the way. Now, while that's in there, I can go ahead now, do the same over here. So here's our old pads. That's the front one and that's the rear. All right, we'll slide our new tensioner on and we'll snap that in. We'll make sure that's good and seated, and it is. All right. There. Alright, so now both shoes are on and installed. Make sure my oil pump stays lined up in there. Alright, now we're ready to go ahead and put our bearings and our cams back in. Oh, that fell in. Alright, before it falls in, make sure my cam plates up there good. There, that fell in. Alright, so those are in now. Yeah, there's where my retainer ring goes. The bearings are seated well. My plate lines up good. My bearings are all the way down and flush. We're lined up really, really good. Go ahead and pull the grenade pin on that and verify that is riding really good and square on that. The retention's good. Spring is really good. Now I can just put my blue Loctite, put my plates back on, we'll torque those down, and then we're done with our tensioners. This I'm going to leave pulled back until of course we get our gears and chain on. Insert clip that goes back in here on this, put down over there. That snapped in good and it is seated, so we are good on that. Everything looks good and square. I've got to keep the tension off of these, because if you go to put these in with tension on this chain, it draws them in too much and you're going to have a booger trying to get these back on the bike in the cam bearings. So I got to put my pin back in. I should not have pulled it. I got anxious, I got excited. Now that'll give us a little bit of wiggle room when we go to put these cams in the cam bearings. On your model, you might have an O-ring that goes here as well. So don't forget that. There'll be 1, 2, 3 on yours. Some models. This is the very first twin cam. It's just got the one here and the one down there. So we'll go ahead and oil this up. We'll set it up in there so don't forget it. We'll push it back. We'll make sure it's seated back in there good. Just pop that in there like that. Now they're good to go. Now I can go around here and clean all this up. All right, so we got all the gasket off best we could. And while you're doing that, go ahead and do your lifter block tops too, because as you clean that off, the debris will fall down, beep, 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 hello, down in there. So you can clean all that out as well. You better believe the more the better. These will be run in with dowels, one here, that we will try to line up. So we'll get this up here. It looks like my pump is sitting where it should be. Yeah, there it went. Take my rubber mallet, run it on up in there. That's what the manual says to do. Oh yeah. Run our bolts in. I did blue Loctite these. 90 to 120 inch-pounds. Alright, so we'll do the first one here. This is number 1. We're just going to tighten these for now. I got to move you back a little bit. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. Oh, that was short. This is 5. This is 6. It'll only go on one way. There we go. Give that a little tap. That a little tap. Now, our gears are still lined up at the top, and we're lined up right here, so we are good. Now we're going to red Loctite these. Let's put my tension back on my chain, both there and here. Then let the rear wheel back down. That holds things in place because these aren't torqued crazy tight. This is your crank and primary. So your crank gets 15 foot-pounds initially. This gets 15 foot-pounds initially. Then you back these off a whole revolution. Back this off a whole revolution. Then this gets 24 foot-pounds and this gets 34 foot-pounds. So with the wheel down, it really does a good job at holding everything. Of course, red Loctite on those. And the manual said, you know, there's a longer bolt with a thicker washer, a smaller bolt with a thinner washer, but the washers on these measured the same and the bolts look the same, so maybe it's on the newer models. Put a little bit of oil behind the washer, but red thread lock these. Down and around, it's connected, so I've got to kind of be careful. Kind of hold that up there. I want to bring this off a little bit. I want to get my gasket in there. Then I want to find the hole. And all the way on this other side, I want to do the same. Then we'll just go around here. I'll torque all these down, and then we can start on our lifters. All right, so I just got these kind of snugged up. Torque sequence is number 1 here. There's 90. Number 2 is down here at the bottom. Alright, that was 3. This is 4. Alright, 5 is here. 6 is up here. 7 is here. 8 is here. Maybe this way. 9 is here. And then 10 is here. Throw me a bunch of oil down in there. And then we're going to start with this outer cam. That's how it was sitting right there. So the oil hole facing that way. And I'm going to take a different oil can. It's got a little nipple on it. And I'm going to stick it right in there. And I'm going to pump that lifter up. There we go. Then I'm going to make sure everything's cleaned off. I'm going to oil that roller, turn to the back, and I'm going to just drop it down right in there. Yeah, there we go. Saw a little bit of trash come out of there. Huh. Glad I did that. The oil hole, and this is of course lubed up. Oil hole go in this way. So we'll just set that right down in there. Now I can take my pin, and I want to make sure my pin locks down in there so these lifters do not twist. That would be bad, bad, bad. We've already got the surface here cleaned, and we're going to take one of our gaskets, and you'll see the gasket has two little flange things on it, and that goes over this little block here. Like that. There we go. Make sure the bottom of your lifter block cover is clean, and we can just go ahead. Once we got our bolts, let's Loctite our bolts. We're going to go with blue. I'll go ahead and put a bolt in, put it on the gasket, and find the hole. And these don't have to be aligned like the Evos and shovels, so that's a good upgrade. New O-ring in here. Grease that up a little bit. Roll that up. And then you got a fat O-ring that goes up here in the top of the head, and they'll usually stay up in there. Make sure you push them and they're seated up. And then you've got your skinnier, fatter O-rings that go down in here. So you'll have a total of 6 O-rings for just these two push rods, and 6 for the front. So there'll be a lot in the package. Now we can just go ahead and snap that in there like that. Actually, we'll put that back there in that one. So remember, the exhaust is longer. This is for the rear. So here's our exhaust. And what I like to do is just blow, make sure there's no obstruction in this. And I'm just going to drop this down through that and into there. This is our intake. No obstruction. We'll drop that down. We'll go right into there. I'm going to jack the back up off the rear tire. It's still in 5th gear. And I'm going to rotate it around to where these two push rods are at their lowest point. We'll take this O-ring out. You will be supplied in the kit with a new one. Don't forget that. Don't forget to put that back on. And then we'll put that back on. And here's our breather assembly. And not too bad. What we can do for a new one. You've got this that usually just kind of peels off, but you might have to take you a blade and get all that off. And then you also have a separation here that these can come off. I'll take me a razor blade, clean all that off. And here's your umbrella valve. All right, so we'll just grab that valve, pull it out. So our kit comes with a new one. Now we'll just take our little valve and push in there. I will take my pliers and just kind of pull it around, make sure it's seated well. We'll take our new filter, poke down in there. Very good. And we'll take our cap and put a new gasket on there. We'll stick that on there and a new gasket on the bottom. And then this is ready to go back on the rocker arm assembly. All right, now that that's all back together, I will inspect our arms here. All that looks good. Back here, our rides on the springs and on the valves. Down here, make sure everything's good and clean where it's supposed to be. And then also check your play here. Sometimes you can get chatter, and it just comes from these. Of course, clean up your threads. And now we'll just try to fandangle this on. Get it lined up. Get a couple of them started. And because it's not on the lobe, there shouldn't be any pressure on our push rods. And of course, before we tighten this down, we'll make sure our push rods are good and seated down in the lifter socket and up here in the arm. And indeed, that one is. That one is. Yes, everything's nice and well lining up, going together. Things lined up good on the valves as well. And we're ready to torque down. Just gonna run these in with my fingers back here. Got these down to just where they're touching. I don't know if you can see or not, but this rocker assembly is still off of this cover here. So I'm gonna have to slowly put tension evenly across this. It's gonna compress those lifters. Eventually they're gonna bleed down once this gets torqued. Then we're okay once these bleed down and I can turn them with my fingers. We can start working on the front. Okay, on these bolts, the rocker arm assembly bolts, they're 18 to 22 foot-pounds. On these, they are 90 to 121 inch pounds, 120 inch pounds. I want to go ahead and just get these seated. So what I'll do is I'll just start turning in about a revolution at a time, and I'll go over and do the other. Now I've got this adapter here, this dog leg, and I've always been told you torque with it like that, but one of you subscribers said, nope, it's not how you do it, Bubba. Torque like that, 90-degree angle gives you the proper torque. So I'm going to try that, and I appreciate the info on that. So I'm going to go crisscross. That feels like it's already kind of seated down. Now I'm not torquing at the moment. Just trying to go a revolution down. That's good. It's still not seated down on the push rod end. The ones on the back, they're down. So you got to take your time with these. Give them a minute. Let them bleed down. If it gets tight, stop. See, that's already loose now. That's about a revolution. It's almost down. That's easy to turn now. Not putting really hardly any pressure at all. Okay. The back ones are already down, so these are going down pretty good. So they're all seated now. I can see visually and I can feel they're seated. Let me go back there and check the back. Now I can switch over to the torque wrench, and I've got it set at 20. Specs are 18 to 22. So I'm going to start here, and I want to do just a quarter at a time. That's enough till I get a good torque. All right, so those are now torqued. Now these are 90 to 120 inch pounds. It's a 3/8. All right, so that's done. So we'll make sure this is nice and clean. We'll clean the top cover as well. We'll get our gasket and we'll throw our bolts in. Those are blue Loctite. Now our cover has this indent here that goes here, and it's got this side cut out. So that'll go on just like that. And then this cover will go right over like that. And then we'll glue these up, throw them in, torque them down. There is a sequence to this so that it does not warp. We got our long bolts here in the front and our 3 short ones on the left side. All right, these are 7/16 and they are torqued to 15 to 18 foot-pounds, so just as much as a rocker assembly was. So I'm going to go ahead and just get these down to where they're touching. And now we'll take our adapter. I've got this set at 15. It's 15 to 18. Snap that in. And our 1 is over on this side in the middle. We'll snap that on. And then 2 is right here. Okay. 3 is on the back side over there in the front. And then 4 is here. 5 is in the back on the other side. And then 6 is right here. All right, that's 15. Let's go up to 16. Now this is done. We just got to do the exact same thing to the front, but you don't do that until these have bled down. Now we took some time doing this, so already I can turn that exhaust. Oh, and I can turn my intake. There's no up and down movement, so there's zero lash on this. So I'm happy with that. Remember, we didn't readjust anything back here. So everything's good. Now all I have to do is just snap those down, get a couple of my clips, make sure that seat's up in there, in that O-ring. There we go. And I'll stick that up in there. And I will use a flathead. The wider the flathead you got, the better. To get up in there, just work my way down while I'm pushing in. And there you go. Those are on, those are installed, everything's good here. Now we're free to rotate the motor over once we get our push rods in here and do the exact same thing. When we get the front one done, we can actually go ahead and crank the bike with the plugs out, no tank on. We'll plug the console back in so we can see the oil pressure and make sure it's building oil pressure. So now we turn this on, we should see, I did put the bike back in neutral. There's our oil light there. And as we crank, we want to watch that oil light go away. It might take a minute to build up some pressure. Let's try it again. There we go. So we built up pressure, and now we know that our oil pump is pumping. Everything went back together good. Well, that's going to do it for this week's video. Before you go, though, to all of our subscribers and paying members, and you guys are the best folks on YouTube. Your comments, your likes, your shares, your questions, your suggestions, it really helps my channel, and I thank you so much. So thank you so much for hanging out in the shop with me today, and tell your mama and them I said Merry Christmas.